right. I'm back. I have not fired up YouTube yet, but we will sit here and get some links all ready to go here for the tubes. Oh, jeez. All right. Let's put that in there like that. How's everybody doing? Ahoy! Okay. Got that. There's not a lot today, so this isn't going to be the longest space news around, but, you know, we'll go from there. I fell asleep. You're back now? Oh, welcome back. All right. My feed is being clobbered with NASCAR and not space stuff. Okay. I assume you have this in the queue. Let me see. Yeah, link up anything that you guys want to talk about. That, I mean, yeah, no, I didn't have that one. All right. What else? What else is there? Let's go. Oh, there was my problem. I was in the For You category. Whoops. Annular eclipse tomorrow in Antarctica. All right. Just, it's peppered. My feed's peppered with the ending of the Daytona 500, which I did not like, to say the least. I didn't like that. There's an Artemis update. Yeah, that's the big one. Cool. We'll paste that in, and I think that's enough to get going. Let's get YouTube's up and running here. I've asked this before, but maybe at the end of Space News, could you give me your thoughts on rotary launch systems that's being developed? They're not being developed because it's dumb. I have not heard good things about spin launch. I've heard pivot, so no. Pork sword, I never thought that was a good idea, to be honest with you. Yeah, Sam, I'm kind of with you. Lack of driving standards is technically a standard, dude. I wanted to slap the guy that hit Hocevar. That pissed me off. But what are you going to do? What are you going to do? All right. All right. I think I am... Clamp arms are starting to close once again. Nice. I have Starbase Live up. Actually, let me key in the audio for them. All right, dudes. Let's start up. We should have enough here. Okay. YouTube starting up in 5, 4, 3. This is the Eric Johnson Space Administration Space and Rocket Review. It is February 16th, 2026. Welcome to the Space and Rocket Review. I am EJ, your host. I don't know. I just say that in case anybody's watching on the VOD. I don't want them to be like I just clipped part of the stream. You know, we have to be semi-professional around here. Just a little bit. All right. Space News brought to you by Kappa. Okay, so welcome. Let's just wait a second here for everybody on the tubes to come on in, and we'll go from there. Sorry for Space News being a little bit behind. I had to finish building turrets in Factorio.
Discovery, go at throttle up.
Judo, 63-month resub. Cool story, bro. Thank you, Mr. Polo. Hey, Bill, evening from the UK. How you doing, man? How are you?
Discovery, go at throttle up.
All right. So, let's see. What do we have? I think I want to start, if we're doing Monday, like, I want to do Monday Space News, right? So I think a good Monday Space News, a good place to start. Hey, the Polo's still grooving. All right. Flip up, 50-month resub. Thank you. I think a good way to start would be to see what we have for launches for the week. We have Starlink 1036 on Wednesday, Starlink 1725 on Thursday, Firefly Stairway to 7 at During the Flame Trench. Nice. We'll see how that pans out. That factory's coming along. It is. And then Starlink 6-104 on Saturday. And then, yeah, Sunday is next week, technically. We only have 4 launches this week. Not a lot of launches. We're just going to have to play more video games. So, let's get into what happened over the weekend. Did anything happen over the weekend? Yes. So the Crew 12 Dragon did launch and dock to the space station. Here, you want to see something cool? Check this out. This was Saturday afternoon. Hey, baby. That's Dragon on approach to the ISS right there. Oh, it's technically not on approach, but you get the idea. Boop. Oh, hello. I posted this in Discord. I'm not interested in that news. Maybe after space stuff in Mana. Thanks for the excellent Crew 12 coverage. Yeah, a little bit of more personal space news. I did do the...
Switching between...
I did do the coverage for Crew 12. For NSF, that was the first time I've ever done that. Which, yeah, pretty cool. Pretty cool. Here, let's get to... Oh, hello. Just shot a Dragon docking. Once again, this was on Saturday. I'm sorry, I just wanted to see this. I didn't get a chance to see it over the weekend. Yeah, Yeah, how about that high-def camera? Oh, we spoke too soon. You love the Crew 12 and Vulcan coverage? Thank you. So that looks to be an R-bar approach. Using the top docking port on the ISS for Dragon. Aligned with the radial bar. There's two proverbial kind of runways that that Dragons and Starliner can dock to. There's a V-bar approach and there's an R-bar approach. Basically, there's the docking port that points at the front of the ISS and there's a docking port that points up, right? So they call it a V-bar approach because you are rendezvousing on the ISS's velocity vector, meaning the prograde retrograde vector, basically where the station's going and where it's coming from, right? That right there is an R-bar approach, meaning if this is the ISS, right? This is the ISS right here. Dragon's coming in, it goes up and docks to the top docking port. The R-bar approach stands for radial bar, meaning the up and down axis on the ISS. If you picture kind of the ISS flying, actually, I go back and show you the pictures. If we pop back here, we could probably see a good picture of the ISS. There we go. Let's see if we can find one that's not as exposed. Yeah. Well, this is good enough. See right there? That's the V-bar docking port. The R-bar docking port where they're going is over here. So this right here, the ISS, picture the truss segment, like if you're talking about like orientation of an airplane, right? The truss segment is your wings, so to speak, right? So that's left, so that's port, starboard, right? You have fore and aft. The Russians bring up the tail end of the station. The USOS side is the front of the station. Oh, much better shot right there. So that's a great picture. This is the long axis of the station. That's the V-bar axis. This technically would be radial. That's the radial axis. Or no, radial is this way. That's the normal axis. That's what that's called, normal. Radial is this way. Velocity is this way. So they obviously can't dock on the velocity vector because there's a dragon. There's a dragon there already. You can just see it down there. That's docked on so the V-bar is taken up right now. So right there, you could see the R-bar, docking port. So they're going to go up and over, right? And then they're going to come down on the top right here. And that's ultimately what did happen on Saturday. That camera that we just saw docking is technically pointed up relative to the station. Now, keep in mind, there isn't really orientation in space. Like, there's no up, down, left, or right. I mean, technically, the North Pole's over there. The South Pole's over there, right? But there is what's called localized orientation. How you're positioned relative to your target, right? And they use the ISS localized orientation for approach here. Curious, what's the difference between the Dragon and Soyuz approach? So Soyuz has, so there's one right there. Soyuz can approach from R-bar or V-bar, but it's on the back side of the station. They can dock to the very back of the station, or they could dock on top, or they could dock on the bottom. There's one right there. And then there's a progress capsule attached to the very back of the station.
Discovery, go at throttle up.
Starliner can dock too. Yeah, once. Meanwhile, this is the 13th NASA docking of a crewed capsule to the 13th NASA and SpaceX docking to the ISS here with a crewed capsule. That's not including the 4 Axiom missions. So DM1, Or yeah, so DM1 didn't have people on it, but so DM2, we'll count DM2 because that has people on it, and then crew 1 through crew 12, and then 4 Axiom missions. So that's 17 crewed missions to the space station with Dragon. Yeah, to Starliner's half of a mission with Starliner. I haven't been into this for years, and I'm starting to get my groove back. It's been pretty good, Judo. It's been pretty fun. Starship, we're kind of in a lull right now, dude. Starship is getting all rebuilt. They're refactoring. They refactored everything, and they're building out a new version. Block 3, Starship, which is going to be nice, to say the least. Will Starship and the ISS overlap? In terms of sending a Starship to the ISS, it's possible. I'm not entirely sure a Starship would be capable of doing it. But actually, you know what? You know what the better way to say this is, Zach? Hold on. Let me take off my boots. Take off my boots, Will. All right. You know what the right way to say this is? Could a Starship dock to the ISS? Sure. Yes, probably. Yeah, you could probably get away with it. On the V-bar approach, sure. Not on the R-bar approach. It'd have to be right. It'd have to be on the V-bar approach. Now, why? That's the big thing. Why? Why would you do that? What's the point? Now, the point is that it's freaking cool, right? But in terms of like a Starship supporting ISS logistics operations, it's kind of worthless. There's no pressurized volume yet, unless they want to dock like some type of HLS to it. There's really no point. Could it be done? Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, what's the point though? NASA doesn't want to take any risks with their now, well, at the end of life, like 40-year-old space station. They don't want to take any risks with that. And I don't blame them. But it would still be cool. I think it'd be really neat if Starship could go and grab one of the modules and bring it back down. But, yeah, that's not happening. It would be nice, though. Would Starship be too big to get close enough to the ISS docking ports? It depends on what Starship is going to use for RPOD, Yarg, which is Rendezvous Proximity Operations and Docking. It would dock like the shuttle, Vlad. Yes, absolutely. It would depend on what type of cold gas thrusters or hot gas thrusters or any type of thrusters that it's using. You got to be careful when you approach the ISS. If you notice where the spacecraft dock, there's a Progress back there, there's Soyuz, there's another Soyuz right there, there's a Dragon right there, there's an HTVX right there, with the folded down solar panels that's docked to the Nader port, the Nader port of Node 2. Note how where all the spacecraft dock are where the solar panels aren't. That's on purpose. Nothing docks out here because you don't want to blow a thruster into the solar panel. That will damage the solar panels, amongst other things. It could also put torsional load on the truss segment, and that's not designed for torsional load. This was studied a lot during the revised baseline segment of Space Station Freedom in the late 80s, before that project got canceled too. So yeah, Starship would have to be it'd have to be a very careful approach. Could it do it? Yeah, probably. SpaceX, it would probably, knowing SpaceX, they'd probably lift Dragon's docking system and just use that. I know that that's what they're using for HLS, so yeah, I mean, it's possible. Would it be really cool? Sure. Figured it might be useful after the Dragon expires. I thought it was retiring soon. Dragon is not retiring anytime soon. However, they have... This is personal opinion. I think we're at the beginning of the end for Dragon. I know that sounds ridiculous, but they're not making any more of them. There's no more Dragons being built. SpaceX has pivoted the entire Crew Dragon program, with the exception of like operations and logistics, right? They're not making them. They're not fabricating new Dragons anymore. They made one more out of spare parts, and then that was it. They made one more because NASA wanted one more for better logistics operations, and then that's it. There's no more Dragons being manufactured. Dragon 1, Dragon 2, that's it. So the production run is finished because they're moving to Starship, which that does not mean that Dragon is not going to stop flying anytime soon. I really foresee Dragon's probably going to fly for another 10 years if I had to guess. Probably more. Yeah, 5 to 10 years, which is, when you think about it, that's not that long. What's 5 to 10 years for Dragon? 10 flights? Crew Dragon flies twice a year, so it's not much more. Does that matter since they're reusable? They used the shuttle over 20 years after it was finished manufacturing. The capsule with the heat shield, reusable? And the trunk? I mean, you could probably push it out a little bit longer, but there's certainly wear components. Like I said, I think it's going to be good for another probably 10 years. 5 to 10 years, I'd say. Maybe 20 more flights. Maybe. Something like that. What I'm basing that off of is that, look, could they keep flying it indefinitely? Yeah, sure. I really think that SpaceX will have crewed Starship. I've been saying 2028. With a slight change in plans for SpaceX going to the moon and stuff, it's probably going to be a little bit longer, because they changed. I mean, SpaceX just fundamentally changed their entire architecture around it last week. No longer, they delayed Mars by 5 to 7 years, which means it's delayed by 20. Unfortunately, a lot of people are pissed off about that, but I personally always thought the moon first was a good idea. I mean, you know, like, I'm not trying to be like, yeah, that's awesome. I've been Team Moon for a long time. Joe Simba 1, 69-month resub. Nice.
Discovery.
Xerax, what's up, man? Hey, Xerax, how you been? I was thinking about you the other day. How's things? You got better? Better now that you have wheels? You know, last time we kind of had a little chit-chat. You weren't doing too good. You could just say yes or no. Yes, I am good. Or no, please, just keep streaming. The moon is way cooler anyway. No sense in achievement hunting at the cost of practical value. I think the moon is the best training ground to go to Mars, Zach, if you really want my honest opinion. If you can make a self-sustaining city on the moon, you can make a self-sustaining city on Mars. Easy. And the moon is right there. It's good for rapid prototyping, which suits SpaceX a lot. Moon first, get paid, then Mars. Yeah, I think it's a great idea. Like, I've been thinking more and more, and that kind of, we'll weave this all together, you know. We'll weave this all together with, you know, SpaceX and AI and all this other stuff.
Go at throttle up.
I think, I've been thinking about it, and what's kind of getting, what I'm kind of coming to terms with is that, look, do I like the AI stuff? No, not particularly. I don't. It's cool, I guess. Like, I appreciate it, but it doesn't do anything for me. Space exploration is what does it for me, you know? I don't want a bunch of robots just going and exploring Mars. I mean, that's cool, and that's what we've been doing for a long time. I want people there. You know, that's the human spirit thing that, you know, that ties into a lot why I like spaceflight, right? But, you know, look, guys, if AI ends up being this ridiculous arms race, right? Like I've been talking about, And it does extend out into space, which, I mean, that could carry downsides like Kessler syndrome and stuff. But you're looking at a way to fund it. Multiplanetary. That's what you're saying. That's what I was talking about. Now you have a way to fund this. You have a way to actually fund a lunar city. Because up until this point, there really hasn't been a potential avenue for profitability for going to the moon. That's always been the argument, right? Oh, NASA needs to go to the moon because it's not profitable to go to the moon. Well, it's about to be profitable for SpaceX if this whole AI thing takes off the way Elon sees it's going to take off. You know, I have to say that's if that's the case, we're approaching Star Trek a lot faster than you might think. And I'm saying that as somebody that I'm not particularly a fan of AI, but whatever, I appreciate it. Makes funny memes. To cure cancer, right? You're using AI to cure cancer, right? Nice shirt, by the way. Thank you. Very little commercial use on the moon. Plenty of commercial value on the moon. Yeah, there you go. Padme face. To cure cancer, right? Right? That was pretty funny, man. Xerax, doing okay. You got your wisdom teeth out today. Your face hurts. Yeah, it's going to be like that. Just stock up on the ice cream and you're good to go. If you can't camp in your own backyard, then you definitely can't go camping in the forest. Bingo. Good way to say that. See last. What's up, Brendan? But what are they going to use for the Haven station if they if they decommission Dragon in the future? Starship? I mean, Brandon. Yes. Yes, Starship. Vast has plans. Actually, here, look. How topical. Vast has been selected by NASA's space operations for a 6th private astronaut mission to the International Space Station, launching no earlier than summer 2027. Commercial crew will spend up to 14 days aboard the space station. Now, Vast is a private space station company. They're working on their Haven 1 space station, and this isn't just some pipe dream, okay? They actually have the actual space station module is being manufactured right now. There it is. It's going to take a while for it to get going, but it's on its way. That is a flight article right there. And there's the wire harness for it and pneumatic lines, which is funny. They're all on a jig and they have to install the dang thing. Quicos! Now, if you look at Vast's plans, okay? If you look at their plans, Vast has, well, Brandon, I don't really have any better way to explain this. I could go find the media. I could go find, like what they're working on a 9-meter module. Or a better way to say this, a module that fits in a 9-meter payload bay. Vast is run by a guy named Max Haut. Max Haut's not an idiot. I actually like that dude a lot. If you guys are familiar with, this comes from the streaming world. If you are familiar with Mevo cameras, the Wi-Fi high-def camera that like live streamers wear on their shoulders and stuff, yeah, that was his idea. He invented those. And then he sold it to Logitech and used that to fund a spaceflight company that makes space station modules. Yeah, we like Max. Max is cool. Good dude. So he works pretty closely with SpaceX because Dragon is what's going to be the capsule that's going to be docking to their space station. Yeah, they have a 9-meter module in the works. Basically, they're taking into account Starship's expansion. They're taking into account that Dragon will eventually be done. Here, this is what I want to show you. So Vast wants to make a bunch of Haven modules, right? And then they have that in the center. It's an 8-meter module. It's designed to fit inside of Starship, yes. Here's the freezing temperature on the moon would be good for AI. Getting service cold enough costs a fortune here. Yeah, Rose, it's the thermodynamics that really does it. Now, the problem, there is a problem with that, but I don't think it's an unsolvable problem. All right. So think about it like this. Is space good for computing? No. No, it's not. You are computing in a vacuum. Okay. Now, some people might think that, oh, that's a really good idea. That's the absence of heat. That's great. Yeah. The thing is that, okay, so if you have a processor up in space, right? You have a processor. That processor is going to do electrical things. It's going to think, do its thing, right? And it's going to create heat. If you're watching this on a computer, your computer has a heat sink. I gestured to my computer like you guys can actually see it or something. It's right there. Computers generate heat. There's no way to get rid of that heat on orbit unless you're using black body radiation, which means you basically need to hook a radiator up to your computer. All satellites have these. Now, is that a hard problem to solve? I mean, it's a challenge. To heat mitigation on spacecraft and on satellites is a challenge, so to speak. That's why every spacecraft is like wrapped in gold and silver space blankets. Like, it's called multi-layer insulation, or MLA. Mylar wrap is what is the slang term for it. That's to keep the heat from beating on certain components, and then they can use the thermal control loops on their satellite or whatever to dump the heat, and they actually dump the heat through infrared. They use black body radiation. They dump it through IR. Yeah, which is infrared. Yeah, heat, infrared light. Cool, huh? So here's the thing. Is that a pain in the butt to solve? Yes. Do terrestrial data centers have an advantage here? Yes, because you can use the atmosphere as your heat sink. Right? You use the atmosphere. The atmosphere is relatively cold. So a data center in a place that's relatively cold, you'd be good to go. Right? But here is the one kicker. This is why Elon is springing for data centers in space. A terrestrial data center still has to connect into the power grid. It has to connect into the power grid, or connect to a power plant, or use solar panels. Here's the thing. You're going to need a lot of solar panels if you want to operate a terrestrial data center. A lot of solar panels. Like, putting a couple up on the roof is not going to power a data center in its vast electrical power needs. You need like a nuclear power plant to do something like that, or just a power plant in general, or connect into the grid. So you get a power bill. Okay. Unless you want to make a solar farm that's the size of a small city to power your data center, we could do that. That'd be kind of cool. Wouldn't hate it. You're going to have to pay the electrical bill. In space, there is no electrical bill. You use solar panels. And you can make a bigger solar panel up there. That ain't no problem. Just make a bigger one. What are you going to do? Run out of space? Therein lies the positive. Is the thermal control system problem a pain in the butt? Yes. Do on-orbit data centers have to deal with this? Yes. Do terrestrial data centers have to deal with it? No. Power is free in space. Solar panels work way better up there than they do down here, because down here there's an atmosphere in the way. And gas diffuses light. Our atmosphere diffuses the light. Solar panels don't work as well as they do down here as they do up there. That's the whole idea. So the thermodynamic problem is kind of a pain in the butt to solve up there, but if your power bill is free, that becomes a very easy problem to solve, right? And then typical SpaceX fashion, they're going all in on vertical integration. So this is a potential, like, do I like AI? Once again, no, not particularly. This is a potential way to indefinitely fund a lunar exploration. This is essentially a blank check. I mean, Starlink, not a blank check, but close. This could potentially be a blank check. If Elon and SpaceX win the AI wars, right, that are going on right now. Yeah, there's let's just say there's a lot of potential for growth there. I prefer saying that all the costs are up front. That's a good way to say that, Fingloriously. Yeah, I like that. I might co-op that if you don't mind. Radiation hardening will be the next big challenge. Bit flips will not be fun to deal with. You're launching more things into space, you deal with this problem. You don't think Starlink, like that's what I mean, Rarest. You don't think SpaceX has some experience rad hardening Starlink? Dude, we got like, I'll say it once, I'll say it again. Do I like AI? No, not particularly. Makes funny memes. I don't like that it's invaded my life. It's very annoying. However, if that's your means to indefinitely fund a space program to another celestial body or planet, I guess I'm okay with it. I don't like it, but I'm okay with it. I am voicing my dissenting opinion into the void of AI, and AI's going, oh yeah, I'm sorry you kind of feel that way. I really, I understand. I can understand as an AI how I could be intimidating to people, but yeah, don't worry, everything will be fine. And I'm like, no, Mr. AI, you don't understand. Yeah, I think I do. No, you don't. I don't. No, you don't. All right, I just don't understand. That's right. AI is revolutionizing software engineering, which touches all industry. How can you ignore that? Because I don't do software. I'm in entertainment. Remember? Have you guys seen Pluribus? I won't spoil anything. Kind of like that. He's in meatware? Yeah. I'm in meatware. Thank you very much. Something like that, or softer, right? On the other side, though, what if the AI bubble bursts? Phil, if the AI bubble bursts, the data center in space isn't necessarily a stupid idea. Remember, AI is tacked on to the data center. You don't necessarily need that. You just get rid of it, and now you still have a data center in space. Anyway, I don't think it's the stupidest idea, but I'm not that big of a fan of AI. Like, I'm not... I am hating a little bit, I'll admit it, but, you know, I'm not like, oh my god, I hate this. Like, if it means more for spaceflight, I guess I'm cool with that. You know, like, if it means more money for spaceflight, I guess we're kind of all right. All right, anyway, let's get on to the next bit of news here, shall we? Check this out. Everyone I talk to at my job, knowers know, thinks all of the AI utopian types, the AI will replace all of our jobs. People are full of it for what it's worth. Though that says more about where the regulators are than anything else. Look, man. I mean, Zach, I'm not surprised. But also at the same time, look, I'm not ignorant to what AI does. Like, that's the other thing. I think where I don't like AI is the intrusion of privacy. You know, if you have AI on your phone or you're prompting Chat GPT, you know, it's one step from you like querying the AI to it being able to make predictive analysis on your habits or something. I got a big problem with that. And don't sit here and say, well, it's not going to happen, man. It's not how AI works. Shut up. AI learns at a very rapid pace. Come on. Just because it's not a thing now doesn't mean it won't be in the future, okay? Come on. Don't be a goofus. You know? Yeah, it's like Minority Report, Pezzy. Exactly. That's my problem. With that being said, I'm not ignorant to what it's doing. It's basically completely hollowing out your software engineering industry. It's not great for them. Anyway. Yeah, Magellan, I don't like that. I'm not a fan. Anyway. All right. You're speaking facts. Trust me, I know some crazy stuff about AI. I don't like that. But hey, whatever. Go to the moon. That's pretty neat. All right. So here, next bit of news before we get too depressing. All right. Well, Chris, here's the next article. NASA is eyeing the next wet dress rehearsal for Artemis 2. NASA's targeting Thursday, February 19th as the tanking day for the second wet dress rehearsal ahead of the agency's Artemis 2 test flight. Over the weekend, teams replaced a filter in ground support equipment that was suspected of reducing the flow of liquid hydrogen during a February 12th partial fueling test. The test provided enough data to allow engineers to plan towards a second wet dress rehearsal this week. Engineers have reconnected the line with a new filter and are reestablishing proper environmental conditions. The wet dress rehearsal will run the launch team as well as supporting teams through a full range of operations, including loading cryogenic propellant into SLS. Conducting a launch countdown, demonstrating the ability to recycle the countdown clock, and drain the tanks to practice scrub procedures. Launch controllers will arrive on their consoles at the Launch Control Center at NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida at 6:40 p.m. Eastern Time on February 17th to begin the... Oh, shoot, that's tomorrow. To begin the nearly 50-hour countdown. The simulated launch time is 8:30 p.m. February 19th. Simulated launch time is 8:30 p.m. on February 19th, with a 4-hour window for the test. While the Artemis 2 crew is not participating in the test, a team of personnel will go to the launch pad to practice Orion closeout operations, including closing the spacecraft hatches. During the rehearsal, the team will execute a detailed countdown sequence. Operators will conduct 2 runs of the last 10 minutes of the countdown, known as terminal count. They will pause at T-minus 1 minute and 30 seconds for up to 3 minutes, then resume until T-minus 33 seconds before launch and pause again. After that, they will recycle the clock back to T-minus 10 minutes and conduct a second terminal countdown to just inside of 30 seconds before ending the sequence. This process simulates real-world conditions, including scenarios where a launch might be scrubbed due to technical or weather issues. Spoiled fruits last. Preferably not when I'm reading this, so we can have a contiguous thing about the article. Let's see. Well, NASA will not set a formal launch date until a successful rehearsal and data reviews. The agency has been evaluating in recent weeks if there are additional days that would be suitable for launch and found an extra opportunity the first week of March. However, managers have determined March 6 is the earliest opportunity for launch that allows for a second wet dress rehearsal, sufficient time for data review, and time to transition the launch pad, rocket, and spacecraft to launch operations. What does a filter have to do with the leak? It's a separate issue. No, it's not. Cope. It's not a separate issue. Why did that fuel filter clog? Why? Why would it clog? Because you changed the flow rate? Because you changed your fueling procedure? Yeah, probably. Chris, you asked over in the YouTube chat, do I think that this thing is going to go again? I really have no particular confidence here that this is going to work again. Why? Why? Well, why would it work? What did you change? You changed the seals. Great, you changed the seals already. The seals that were in the TSMU were replaced after Artemis 1. So what? Could have also been FOD. Clogging up a fuel filter? FOD. If there's anything but hydrogen going through that hydrogen line, we got bigger problems than the seals. They sure backpedaled from that whole crew team not needing to practice. Yeah, because their fueling test that was last week, it got overshadowed because it was on Thursday into Friday morning. Between SF-87 and Crew 12, they did a fueling test. It failed miserably. They said the seals were working right, but they clogged this fuel filter. So here's the thing, guys. You think, oh, that's a separate issue. No, it's not. Everything's related to everything. You know why? It all goes to the same rocket. It's a fuel. They said it's a fuel filter. Now, unless there's some dirt and ethanol, bad gas in the hydrogen, right? I would assume that it's ice. Why would ice build up on a filter? Why would that happen? How does ice jam up a filter? You can't solidify hydrogen. Well, you can. It'd be pretty difficult for them to do it. Right? Amit Krishia cited the movement induced by rolling out Artemis 2 as a possible cause. Pieces of the failed LH2 seals plug the filters. I think the filters are upstream from the LH2 seals because they don't test properly. Ask ChatGPT. Nice, nice. So, fellas, I don't have any particular confidence that this test is going to go any different. You replace the seals. All right, great. Were the old seals bad? Did we ever hear that? I did miss a press conference last week, you know? But I refused to. Here, let me read it again. Let me read the copy again. Replaced a filter in the ground support equipment that was suspected of reducing the flow of liquid hydrogen during a February 12th partial fueling test. See, now, why did that clog? Why did that do that? How did you clog a filter? See, I don't like that. I don't like that at all. Why did you clog? How did you clog a filter? What was somebody undoing the fuel lines? Why didn't this filter clog before? Is it a compounding issue? You've done 2 fueling tests on this vehicle and you clogged the filter after 1? What happened here? What was the change in procedure that caused that to happen? Do you see what I'm talking about? Dangerous. I don't like that. How did that clog? Is how it clogged well understood? Why did you clog a fuel filter? How do you do that? Contamination from detanking? Filter in the GSE can also be a filter in the hydraulic component running an impeller. It's possible. Someone on the ground crew is betting their bank account on that Artemis. Betting their bank account on Artemis failure on Polymarket. What? Why? Dude, that's so... Where'd you hear that? Please tell me that that's not true. Please tell me you're screwing with me. The market exists, but we don't know anything about who's buying it. What? There could have been contamination in the fuel tank during detank. Fog got into fog got into commodity storage when pumped back. It blocked the filter. Spoiled. Yeah, you guys can say all that all you want, right? You're not wrong that that could be a thing, dude, right? But also at the same time, why didn't this happen during Artemis 1? These are the questions you got to be asking. Believe me, I'm not asking these questions to be rhetorical. I'm not asking these because, oh, you just don't like SLS. No, 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 no. I'm pretty well versed in flight operations for like doing space flight things. All right? I'm pretty well versed in it. Why are so many things changing? That's not good. That's not conducive for mission success, dude. It's not. Gene Kranz talks about this. Chris Kraft talks about this. This is a bad idea. These are bad ideas because you're introducing unknown unknowns. Why did that filter clog? Oh. Yay! Pad 2 deluge test. All right. See, testing your pad all the time really is a good idea. Is the stream buffering? We are dropping some frames. We should be back now. Dude, I want to see that again. Hang on, real quick. All right, let's take a look. Go away, chat. So there was just a full deluge test out on that pad at Boca Chica. All right, let's see. Whoa! Dude! I love how the guy in the steamroller is like, okay. Holy crap, man. Look at that thing. Dude, that's no joke. Yeah, see, the guy's backing up. He's like, all right. Dude. This dude just stops. Yeah, he's just like, maybe I shouldn't be here. All right, you know. Like, holy crap. Now, this footage is coming from our buddies over at NSF. This is Starbase Live. It's a live stream of SpaceX working on their pads down in Texas. Holy crap. That is no joke. So, a couple of things I've noticed, dudes. Look at how much water they're spraying at the tower. The reason why is because of the pad avoidance maneuver that Starship is going to do. If this is the tower right here and this is Starship taking off, Starship's going to, right after liftoff, it's going to tilt and fly this way. So that means for a momentary second, you're getting an insane amount of thrust going between the pad and the tower. You see they're shooting water that way, higher than the shooting water on the other side. That's that plume right there. See that? Because the close side to the tower of the OLM on this pad, like the first pad, yeah, it got wrecked from doing pad avoidance maneuvers. Dude, that is no freaking joke, man. It's this part of the pad over here, like in this area. So let me think about this for a second. Imagine the water bill. Also, what happened to your hand? I have a cyst on my hand that is, yeah, really affecting movement. Don't worry about it. I'll be fine. Right there. So T0 is 524.33. So, ready? T minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Lift off. T plus 10 seconds. T plus 20. T plus 30 seconds. Is that water fountain deadly for humans? I would not be standing in the flame trench when this happens. How much water do you think that is? It runs for 30 seconds, dude. Well, for the sound suppressor, so the sound suppressor is down here. Up here is the pad deluge. What that pad deluge system is designed to do is spray water over the deck of the pad to make sure that sound doesn't reverberate off of it. There's a reason why this is angled like this. You don't want sound reverberating off the pad. It could damage the vehicle on the way up. The reason why I know that the T0 is 33 seconds past is because the deluge system doesn't go on until the rocket has left the pad. This is what you want. You wouldn't want to spray that when the vehicle is still on the pad, right? Because then you're just hosing down your launch vehicle with water. And this is high pressure water. You don't want to basically pressure wash the thing, right? So that's point of ignition right there, or separation right here. So Starship's gone already in this picture. That looks like the upside down shower head from pad 1 on the top deck. It's kind of like it, dude. Would that water snuff the rocket flame? They don't spray it directly into the flame, Eutychus. It's not sprayed directly in. If you look, it's kind of geysering out in all directions, and I'm sure there's some on the inner rim of the pad here. There's probably some water pushing in. You never spray directly at the motor. That's bad for it. You always want to spray around it or spray where it's going. Panderific, hey, thanks for the raid, man. That is a gnarly freaking thing, though. So if you're just tuning in, guys, courtesy of our buddies over at NSF with Starbase Live, be sure to go over there, give them a subscription of something on YouTube. Buy some of the merch. It's good merch, dudes. I wouldn't plug them if it didn't support me inadvertently. I do work for them. But we just had a pad deluge test. They tested the whole water system for Starship's brand new launch pad. Is it salt water? No. No, they use distilled water. You don't want to spray salt water in here. It'll make things rust, Ciantic. More than regular water. It's fresh water. Yep. Yeah, that is... So this is a gas purged system, meaning they have a bunch of water tanks over here, right? And they spray gaseous nitrogen into those tanks, and it causes a hydraulic effect, and it squeezes the water into the pad. That wasn't full power. Yowza. Is that why they moved the tower arms up? That would be my guess, yeah. That would be one heck of a bidet. One heck of a bidet, they'd never find you. They'd be picking you up with a sponge. The bidet? No. No. Do not want. Do not want. That's awesome, man. Really good stuff. Do not want. I'd love that. No, I don't think you would, man. Jeez. Anyway, cool sound suppressor test. That was our breaking news. Back over to SLS. Yeah, I don't know, dudes. I don't want to cast bad vibes, but yeah, we'll see how this wet dress rehearsal goes, man. We'll see how it goes. I'll be here covering it as best as we can. I'm only just for everyone to be very clear, I don't hate SLS. I'm actually a big advocate of SLS. I think NASA should have their own in-house space program that is completely different than the commercial space program. They should be supplementary to each other, to be very sure. I'm telling you, I'm not pro-commercial. I'm not pro-national space program. I'm both of them. I want both of them. You know why? The only time that this has worked really, really well is when we've had both of those things. The commercial crew program wouldn't work very well without the ISS, now would it? And the ISS wouldn't work very well if we didn't have Dragon and Starliner. If we didn't have Dragon, would it? Nope. You said you have a cyst on your hand. Shouldn't that make it work better? Nice. Is Commercial Crew a partial success or a partial failure? Well, we've asked that question many times, dude. I would say partial success, dude. Partial success. Did they test the deluge system on Artemis 2 mobile launch platform before it was stacked on top of it? Yes. Yes, they did. So LS 39A and 39A and B's sound suppressor and pad deluge systems are all gravity fed. It's pretty idiot proof. You only really need to test that once. They should build like 10 feet of ice blocks. That wouldn't be enough, Petrie. There's a lot of heat that comes out of the bottom of that thing. If you aren't aware, Mr. Yak had his catalytic converter stolen and other issues. You may need to fix it again. No. I talked to Jack already. Yeah, no, he's good. He has a mechanic in Los Angeles that specializes with Land Rovers. So, yeah, my services are not needed. And in fact, I told him to do that. I'm like, just take it there. And he's like, dude, I'm already doing that. I'm like, yeah, why would you call me? So, yeah, that's all. He found it, dude. Yeah. 619, someone took a hammer to the ignition barrel, bypassed the ignition switch. I know what they did. I know exactly what they did. It's almost exactly how I hotwired the F-250. It's very similar. You just got to get at the ignition switch. So somebody took a hammer to the steering column in the ignition barrel and bypassed the ignition barrel to get to the ignition switch and then jumped the car. Not physically, started it. Look up ganglion cyst on YouTube. Why do you guys think I don't know what this is? You know what? I'm just taking this off. It's fine. It's fine. Too distracting. Too distracting. Thank you, Rose. I appreciate it, but I know what it is. I get it. So they jumped it. They stole the cats. They cut the cats out with a reciprocating saw, and then left it on the highway. So
Discovery, go at throttle up.
Drugs. It's chat. They always insist they know better. All right, I'm leaving. Bye. See you later. I'm just kidding. I'm back. All right, let's keep going. So check this out. This is coming from Andrew Parsonson here. He reports on European space. So Skyrora has announced plans to buy what remains of Orbex. Press release. Skyrora confirms it intends to explore the purchase of select Orbex assets, including the Sutherland spaceport, following yesterday's announcement that the company has appointed administrators. Appointed administrators is the European way of saying bankruptcy, I guess. Skyrora is exploring an asset acquisition which would see the established operator invest up to £10 million, subject to the discussions with the appointment administrators and completion of the necessary due diligence and legal processes. Skyrora believes that securing select assets is vital to preserving UK space capability protecting national critical infrastructure, and ensuring that technology and IP developed in the UK remains under UK ownership. This safeguards the product of the taxpayer funds historically injected into Orbex. Dr. Jack James Marlowe, COO at Skyrora, said Skyrora is committed to delivering sovereign launch capability for the UK. Providing reliable, independent access to space is crucial to the UK's strategic interests. Yeah, you did that once before, and then you didn't. But, you know, whatever. Launch will not only unlock commercial activity for companies that need to access space and help achieve the government's objectives for becoming a global player in the space sector, but it is also a strategic defense consideration. As the only UK company with a domestic launch license in both manufacturing and testing capabilities, Skyrora is best placed to take over Orbex's assets and is proud to be leading launch activity from the UK. Very interesting. Very, very interesting. So, Orbex themselves posted this. Today, we released new unseen photographs of the micro-launcher Orbex Prime. With the company on the cusp of entering administration, we have chosen to share unique photography of Prime being assembled, highlighting the main structural components of the launch vehicle in near-flight configuration. These images are testament to the progress we have made and demonstrate the technological advancement we are making on our journey to launch. Oh, hello. Oh, very nice. That scared the piss out of me. McGregor's going. There's a test out at McGregor here. I thought the freaking roof was caving in, man. It's sad news. They were so close. Well, if Skyrora takes over, dude, it's not that big of a deal. I mean, I'll tell you what, Bill, like, just in my semi-expert opinion here, this is not close to flying. It looks nice, though. It really is. There's no wire harness on this thing. In fact, the wiring is barely even done. There's like 1 or 2 wires just wrapped around that there. Also, it's really dusty, meaning nobody's worked on it in a little while, which does suck. Man, that thing's still going, huh? Jeez. This thing is a little ways out from being finished, but that is a flight article, or at least a qualification article. It's pretty damn close. It is nice, dude. Yeah, these are really, it's really nice, really clean. That's a shame. But, you know, Skyrora should be able to do it. I mean, Skyrora is a little bit bigger. I don't know why Orbex wouldn't, you know, why Orbex would want to go into bankruptcy over choosing to sell to another company, you know, to maintain company integrity. But, I don't know. Still would have been better to have 2 companies. Oh, you get no argument from me, man. That sucks. Really nice pictures, though. Beautiful. The other thing that The other thing that I don't really want to say, but I'm going to say it out loud, there's no engines in these pictures. There's no motors. Maybe to offload debt. I don't know. Maybe. Probably couldn't sell because they had too much debt. Yeah, probably. It always seemed odd to me that ESA has always had a couple rockets for decades, and then all of a sudden they're like, you know what? We need 5 more small launchers. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know, man. We'll see. We'll see what happens. We got no engines, Ted. think they lost all the engines when their pad rutted. Did Orbex pop one on the pad? I thought that was Rocket Factory Augsburg. Hey, Ethereal, $5 super chat. All right, I found out the other day that you can just buy an LR101, apparently functional reproduction. Well, that's pretty neat. Nice, Demon. Very nice. No engines. Who do you think they are? Boom. Dudes, did you guys... You guys want to see something funny? Look at this. Here, let me find it. Speaking of Boom, this is the CEO of Boom saying that SLS costs 23 times the entire XB1 program every time it launches. What could private innovators create had this capital not have been confiscated by the government and pissed away? Each time SLS launches, 23 XB1s go up in smoke. We don't hate these programs enough. Does the XB1 fly to the moon or does it fly to the moon or I didn't see it fly to the moon. I saw it fly around Mojave for a little while. Oh, Rook responded to him. All right, let's see what Jared's saying. I love what you and your team are doing at Boom, but I don't think your privately funded XB1 program compares well to SLS, which was conceived 2 decades ago at a time where commercial industry capabilities were non-existent relative to today. That's right. If your point is simply that the government tends not to be an efficient capital allocator and moves too slow, I certainly won't disagree with you there. All that aside, how we got here is less important than where we are today and where we're going. People are welcome to lob criticism, especially when it is deserved, but I choose to get excited about Artemis 2, as it will be the most historic human spaceflight mission in more than half a century. Yeah, what am I going to do with 23 XB1s? It will be followed by America's return to the lunar surface and dozens of additional missions leveraging the power of commercial industry as we build an enduring presence on the moon. When the pivot comes, NASA will be well on its way towards pioneering what no one else is capable of accomplishing, including getting America underway on nuclear power in space. I've said it many times, where Artemis begins is not where we will end. I like that guy. Yeah, have I mentioned that I like him? He said this about Apollo.
And Apollo killed space exploration. Also should not have gone to the moon in 1969. If that seems like a crazy thing, just notice it's 2025 and we can't fly supersonic and we can't land on the moon. So why? I think the answer is the first 50 years from the Wright brothers forward, innovation in aerospace was commercially driven. You build a commercial airplane that passengers got to be able to afford to fly on, that airlines want to operate profitably. And in the 60s, we pivoted to Cold War era national prestige. There was a Soviet project to create a supersonic airliner. There was a European project, and there was an American project. Everybody was building products to show technological superiority, not products that made any commercial sense. Concorde and the Soviet airplane were very similar, so Congress pulled the plug on the American supersonic airplane. Concorde and Concordsky were still coming. America responded trying to protect Boeing by banning supersonic flight over land.
That's what it was.
As long as Boeing's building a supersonic airplane, it was all fine. That project gets canceled, all of a sudden we can't have that sonic stuff. It's terrible. Concorde killed supersonic flight.
I think that very much applies to airlines. I kind of see where he's coming from there. Not the Apollo program. That now, here's the other thing. I don't think he's entirely wrong, but I think he you know, you're using a can of spray paint where you should be using a #2 pencil. All right. If you want to make that argument that the commercial industry got sapped up in Cold War prestige projects, I think that's fair. That's a fair argument to make. However, to blame the entire Apollo program for it is kind of ridiculous. If you're going to blame one particular entity, you wouldn't blame the Apollo program. You'd be blaming NASA in this regard, because that's what NASA did. When NASA was made, it was folded over from the National Advisory Committee on Aeronautics, so NACA, NACA for short. And it was also a bunch of commercial and government facilities that were all rolled into one new entity that is solely designed for national aeronautics and space. That's what happened in 1958, in 1959, and 1960. Now, yeah, if you want to make that argument, I would say that NASA killed commercial industry in space. Yeah, as weird as that sounds. Not the Apollo program. That's just being frankly actually like a little tone deaf. Now, he's right about the supersonic flight thing. He's absolutely right about that. Boeing didn't see it as profitable to make a supersonic transport plane. And when I say profitable, I'm not talking about how modern Boeing sees something as profitable or not profitable. Boeing was working on a supersonic transporter called the 2707. That's what it was called. Basically, it was going to do. The reason why they called it a 2707 is because it was going to do what the 707 did for subsonic flight for supersonic flight. It was a gigantic airplane with swing wings. Well, that was the older version. It was a gigantic, basically a 747 that can break the sound barrier. It's really cool looking plane. But Boeing, halfway through, basically when they got up to what would kind of modern day be like a critical design review, basically right before they were ready to start like making this thing, they'd made a couple mock-ups here and there, right? They went around in the industry. Somebody at Boeing went around in the industry and said, hey, do you want this? And the vast majority of the industry was like, no, we don't. We don't want this at all. Didn't the Boeing SST almost bankrupt them? I would say the 747 almost bankrupted them spoiled. So basically, Boeing went around and said, hey, does anybody want this? They went to all their flagship providers, because back in the day, you'd usually have an airline kind of I mean, they still do this. You'd have an airline kind of partnering with you on development. Like the 747 was not necessarily Boeing's idea. The 747 was the brainchild of, the Boeing engineer named Joe Sutter. And he was the lead engineer on the 747. And a guy by the name of Juan Tripp. Juan Tripp was the CEO of Pan American. They came up with the idea for the 747. Juan Tripp provided the expectations, and Joe Sutter engineered the plane. I mean, amongst other things. So you'd really work a lot with industry. And Boeing went around in like the late 60s, early 70s and said, hey, does anybody want this? And everyone's like, no, not really. No, we're good. We got hub and spoke designs. We're good to go. And then Boeing's like, all right, fine. We're not doing this. And then when they realize Blake Scholl's right about this part. When they realized that Concorde was going to work, right? And our SST was not going to work. I was about to say SSTO. Another timeline, maybe. When they figured that out, yeah, we just banned supersonic transport, saying, think of the animals. Think of the people. It's gonna hurt people. The sonic booms will hurt people. So we banned supersonic transport over land, which basically relegated Concorde to transatlantic flights. Basically dooming that program, like, eventually, which I feel bad about that as an American, but also, yeah, I mean, what are you gonna do? There's a huge smear campaign that went around to all major flight hubs and protested against supersonic flight, and they managed to get supersonic flight banned over land too. Really didn't help. Yes, correct. So he's right about that, and I think that pertains a lot. That's more right when it comes to the airline industry, not necessarily the Apollo program. I think that's crazy. Now, could you make the argument that there was no market for the Apollo program? Yes, absolutely. Could you make the argument that there's no market for the Artemis program? Yes, sure. You'd probably be right until very recently.
Discovery,
Hey, Lava,
go and throttle
15-month
up.
resub. Thank you. You'd probably be right until very recently. You know, SpaceX has come up with a business model for profitable lunar cities. So, you know, that's backed by AI data centers and satellite manufacturing on the moon. Okay. Astronaut guy, you got to tag me if you... Oh, you tagged me. Okay, cool. Since there are basically bigger Atlas boosters, but longer, more powerful, but the same design, they aren't capable of enduring the more thrusted, bigger size, thus the nozzle falls off. What are you talking about specifically? Ethereal had another $5 super chat. Thank you. I'm not sure what you're asking over there, dudes. Sounds like Vulcan talk. That would be my guess. I'm not sure what the query for the original question for this was. I also have an idea as to why the GM63 or whatever SRBs keep shooting off. Since they're basically bigger Atlas boosters, but longer and more powerful, but the same design, they aren't capable of enduring more thrust and bigger size, thus the nozzle falls off. The nozzle, yeah, astronaut guy, but the nozzle didn't fall off in testing. Never has. Didn't fall off in testing, so why would it fall off on the vehicle? Speaking of planes, your TISM kicked in, and I did a deep dive into blended wing body planes and the passenger ones in development right now. I love the idea. Blended wing bodies are cool for subsonic vibrations. Spoiled, in my armchair engineering opinion, I would say that thermal analysis was not conducted using multiple GM63XLs in close proximity to each other. Or in close proximity to any engine. I don't think it's any secret that the inside of the nozzle facing towards Vulcan, the Vulcan core stage, is the first part to fail. You know, the part that's facing towards the BE4 in an area of aerodynamic stagnation on the back of the vehicle. So you have aerodynamic drag at the bottom of the vehicle. There's a low pressure pocket. There's basically dead air behind there. Dead air can't absorb a lot of heat, so that heat has to go somewhere. It has to go somewhere. Some of it gets convected off aerodynamically from the vacuum that is created from the BE4s. But that heat still has to go somewhere. If you're introducing more heat than is being conducted out, there you go. But that's the whole point of the government when you boil it down, to do things that have no market interest that we still deem important. Well, yeah, of course. I never said it wasn't. Delta's throwing a bunch of money at a company that wants to make blended wing passenger planes. Okay. I don't know what that means, LS. You mentioned that the nozzles in the SRBs in question are ablative for cooling purposes. Do you know if these engine nozzles have radial symmetry or if they're deflected away? They're deflected away. The engine nozzle is always canted to point through the center of mass of the vehicle, or average center of gravity of the vehicle. Yeah, Dynasty, the guy in the, yeah. It's not a Challenger situation, Ator. It's different. We were talking about the SRBs potentially having issues on SLS. I don't think that you will, Chris, because the SLS are shuttles. Those are shuttle SRBs. I don't think you will. It's the shuttle design. I think it's the new stuff in the future. Maybe because we have aerodynamic forces on the booster in flight, you can't simulate on the ground. so they don't fall off in ground testing. When do you think Booster 19 will go for a static fire? Another week, week and a half, Derby. Really, you got to start installing engines on that thing. So, Astronaut Guy, here's the thing. Maybe because we have aerodynamic forces on the booster in flight, you can't simulate it on the ground, so they don't fall off on ground testing. That, yeah, sure, absolutely. There's not everything that you can't test for everything on the ground. Flight data is irreplaceable, all right? It very much is. At the end of the day, flight data is king. You can do all the computational analysis you want in the world. It doesn't mean anything unless it's corroborated by a flight, right? Here's the thing. Here's the problem with that when it pertains to Vulcan. The problem with that is that, well, they flew one, it worked. They flew another one, it didn't work. They tested a booster, said they fixed the problem, flew another one, and then it didn't work again. Which tells me that, no, you didn't fix the problem, right? Now, once again, you could argue that, they're learning, they're learning. Dude, the entire nozzle came off on the Cert 2 mission. How much more are you going to learn? You see what I'm saying? They wrote off what happened on Cert 2 as a manufacturing defect, and then claimed they tested the booster, qualified a GEM 63XL out at the test stand, made it work, put them on the SF-87 mission, and then flew it, and then it still broke. Same exact problem. Same spot almost. Brother, that's not a manufacturing problem. That's terrible analysis. That is a design flaw. That's what that is. I don't necessarily call anything a design flaw. It does exactly what you told it to do, except when it doesn't. Like, I mean, that's my guess, if I had to guess, Astronaut Guy, would be that a lot of the analysis from the GEM 60 program, so Atlas's SRBs, were carried over to the GEM 63XL program, like you said. And they thought that the analysis that was done on the GEM 63s was adequate enough. They were adequate enough that they could basically cover their nut, but even if they extended the booster and increased thrust in the design. They didn't cover their nut. No, you didn't. And then they said they fixed the problem and it still happened. Brother, how many they wrote it off as a manufacturing defect. It's not a manufacturing defect. The analysis is terrible. Objectively. Like, that's not my opinion. That's just the state of events. Is the ground umbilical plate from SLS the same one as the shuttle? Pretty much. Too much heat flux into the nozzle. Yeah, but Xerax, don't you think before you're going to put a government payload on your rocket that you should probably be sure about that? It worked, then broke, then worked, then broke again. Weirdly, the third flight worked fine after the fix, but the fourth flight failed. That third flight still had ejecta coming out the back, Sam. It's just that the nozzle didn't come off. My statement comes from all the talk of Artemis Apollo not having a market. My point was that, yeah, that's why the government did it. It's not a corporation. Yeah. Yeah. Blake, like I said, you're using Blake Scholl's using a spray can where you should be using a pencil. Like, brother, it's a little more subtle than that. It's Northrop Grumman, Xerax, yeah, with the boosters. Does the fact that the rupture happened upstream of the nozzle, since the nozzle is the region with the highest heat flux, the idea of heating from the BE4 might be a good theory. That's my guess. They're not dumping the heat. Lava. That's my guess. Engines don't like operating in proximity to each other unless they're tested and designed to operate in close proximity to each other. Now, so Lava, think about it, dude. Like, I don't think it's an unsound theory. The GEM 63s were not XLs. The GEM 63s are built and tested to work next to an oxygen-rich stage combustion cycle engine, right? The RD-180, right? BE4s are an oxygen-rich methylox engine, right? Oxygen-rich stage combustion cycle with using methane. Do you think that's going to get a little bit hotter than the one with Carolox? Carolox can dump the heat because, RP1 absorbs crazy amounts of heat. And we know the RD-180 runs a little fuel-rich on the mixture side, despite having an oxygen-rich stage combustion cycle. because, you know, the black soot that you see coming out of the engines, it's film cooled, at least to an extent, right? And don't get me wrong, so are the BE4s, but when you switch that over to Methalox, you have heat problems. The BE4s radiate out an insane amount of heat because they're oxygen rich. That's just kind of inherent to the design, right? Like, hey Harp, what's going on? 59-month resub. It seems like cost cutting on the ULA side. I don't think it's the ULA side. I think it's very much Northrop Grumman. Now, ULA still is responsible because at the end of the day, they're the ones that put the freaking thing on the vehicle and launched it. But I know I was making a joke about Starliner's RCS. Yeah, I got you. If it was heat from the BE4, wouldn't it fail at the closest point to the BE4s? Where did you see it fail, Contra? A single SRB ground test would have more or less equal airflow around the engine, but in flight I would expect to see an aero dead zone between the SRB and the core stage. Bingo. Like I said, Farron, if if they launched a Vulcan and it failed and it burned outwards first, and then they launched another one and it failed inwards, and then they launched another one and it failed outwards, I'd be like, okay, I'd say the throat design is bad. Right? I'd say that your nozzle and throat, the aft casing on a GEM63 is bad. But two things. One, it always happens on the inside or close to the inside of that nozzle. Two, doesn't happen on Atlas. If there was something wrong with that throat design, don't you think that would have manifested itself on the GEM60s as well, or GEM63s? On top of the XLs, trust me, I think it's aerodynamic stagnation. And I'm not entirely sure why you wouldn't take that into account. Now, like, here's the thing. Northrop Grumman is way smarter than me, and I understand this. They probably did take it into account. The thing is, they probably used the GEM63 analysis from Atlas and the flight data from that to get that word to understand that, and they probably did an extrapolation to save money. You know, oh, if this produces this much heat and this much thrust, the GEM63XL, we extended it by this much so you can kind of connect the dots on where your analysis would go. Yeah, that's the thing. Connecting the dots was wrong. I'll admit I'm not going to say that that's an easy mistake to make, but also at the same time, yeah, that speaks volumes. I mean, Northrop Grumman's got a big problem. They got a big problem with their boosters. I'm noticing a very distinct pattern here. GEM63s have a problem. BOLE booster has a problem. And then they went to test it again, and it exploded again. Worse than the first time. You guys got a big problem. Whoever's designing nozzles up there is not doing their homework correctly. And I'm a little bit worried because those BOLE boosters, we're going to need those in another couple of years. Like, sooner rather than later. So get it figured out. There's no excuse. They have that entire Promontory Point facility. They have a gigantic factory that was built out to scale to build to the space shuttle, like to make SRBs, make a lot of SRBs. Heck, Northrop Grumman has the contract to build SRBs for ICBMs for the U.S. government. You have all these test stands, you have all this stuff, and your nozzles keep failing? Were these problems before Northrop Grumman acquired Orbital? No. What I don't get is SRB's got to be easy to test on the ground. I don't know. If this is because someone didn't get a memo or check the heat the BE4 radiates, someone's in trouble. Yeah, that's what I mean. My guess would be 3LRD is that it's extrapolated from Atlas V flights. They probably tried to use Heritage flight data. It's just a guess. I don't know. They probably tried to use Heritage flight data from Atlas to kind of as a cost-saving method, you know? Oops. Guys, they got a big problem. They got to scale. You know they are on the hook for 38 Vulcan launches with Amazon, right? That's more than the US government. And each one of those Vulcan launches has 6 GEM 63XLs. All the Project Kuiper Amazon Leo launches are a Vulcan VC6 configuration. So you got a big problem and you got to figure that out like now. Like now, or else you're kind of boned. 38 Vulcan launches, more like 50 Falcon launches. We talk about how it's good those BE4s are. Sure, BE4s are great. They're a great motor. It's an Andy Lapsa design. Of course it's a good motor. Andy Lapsa doesn't make junk. He's a fantastic propulsion engineer. If you guys don't know, the CEO of Stoke Space, that are building the Nova rocket with the reusable second stage, and they just cooked up a full flow stage combustion cycle engine for their first stage because whatever. Andy Lapsa, once upon a time, before he founded Stoke, was basically the lead engineer on the BE4 program for Blue. Yep, he left in 2017 to start Stoke. So the BE4 is an Andy Lapsa design. Andy Lapsa's not an idiot. He's like one of the best propulsion engineers in the country by a long shot. What if the FAA doesn't give them an extension? Amazon would be forced to fly on SpaceX. That's probably what's going to happen. I don't think that it's the BE4s that saved that flight for what it's worth. I very much think it's Centaur. The Centaur's what saved that the SF-87 mission. Yeah, to the point where they probably didn't do a disposal orbit with that Centaur, and they probably had to like dump it in a graveyard orbit or something. Terrible thought, I know, but at this point I'm hoping for a shift in payload assignment in a Falcon Heavy renaissance. Might happen. SF-87 also had performance margin. Yeah, spoiled for sure, but that's not how you want to go about spaceflight. You don't want to go about spaceflight being okay with one of your boosters potentially blowing off the side of the vehicle. That's really, really dumb. So think about it like this. If you want to understand why, I'll explain it with cars, because automobiles are something that's a lot more tangible to the average person. So spoiled, I could probably explain it regularly, but so okay. Say you're driving down the road. You have a car. You want to drive your car. You look at the wheel and you see that the lug nuts that hold on the wheel, there's only one. There's only one lug nut holding on your right front wheel. Would you drive that car? No. Absolutely not. Why? Because it's got one lug nut on it. That's not going to work. It might work. Maybe. But you don't want to get in that car and drive it down the road expecting that one lug nut to hold on for dear life. It's not going to happen. That's a really bad way to go about driving an automobile around, right? Same idea here. You don't go in saying like, that could fail, whatever, it's fine. I mean, unless you're doing it for the YouTube content, right? Like, well, NASCAR does one lug nut. That's not what I'm talking about, but, you know, whatever. How much is pre-planned and how much is calculation on the fly when something like the booster doesn't work? So Finn, the plain English way of saying this is that you could do all the math in the world. You won't know if it's going to work until you fly it or test it somehow. Now, some testing, you can kind of buy down risk, right? You could buy down a lot of risk with testing, like testing an SRB on a test stand. Sure, absolutely. Right? But obviously, unless you want to put the whole, like, two B4s and 4 SRBs on some kind of crazy testing contraption, right? You're not going to want to You're not, I mean, unless you want to build a gigantic test stand to test a full stack, sure, go ahead. But you're not going to get necessarily good data from that because you're testing at sea level. The best way to do it at that point is to test it, to fly it, right? The reason, like I said, the reason why is because the math's never going to be superbly accurate. We still, to this day, don't have a way to quantify how stuff flies through space and be able to predict it 100%. We still don't have a way to do it. With all of our computing, all the AI nonsense, blah, blah, blah. It's actually, it's an unsolved equation. It's called the Navier-Stokes equations. There's no way to accurately predict how air is going to go over a wing. You have to test it. You have to have flight data. That's why I say flight data is king, because no amount of math can predict exactly to a T what's going to happen. Now, you can chase it, and you can get pretty damn close with modern mathematics and testing. You can get pretty close. Like well into the high 90s percentage-wise. You know, if you really know what you're doing, you can get pretty damn close. But you're never going to know how close you're getting until you fly it, right? You're never going to know. The only way we know we can get close and we know that our mathematical models are correct is by flying it and using the flight data to corroborate your analysis. If there's a deviation between what the flight did and what your analysis did, your analysis wasn't good enough. That's what I'm arguing is going on. We've seen no flight data from Northrop Grumman with the GEM 63s. They didn't test it, right? And then after Cert 2, they made it this whole thing to test the booster, right? They made it this whole thing to put out another GEM 63XL on the test stand out in Utah, fire the dang thing and make sure that it works correctly, and it worked correctly. And then the next flight, they put they were citing a manufacturing defect. Oh, we just didn't make the nozzle right. Okay. Next flight, same thing happens. Well, actually, the next flight, Vulcan Flight 3, it didn't happen, but there was a lot of ejecta getting shot out the back, if I'm remembering correctly. We'd have to go look. But also, Flight 4, same thing happened. I thought you fixed this. They didn't fix it. You didn't fix the problem. It's all curve fitting, yep. Are most rocket ascents in open loop guidance? Until close to the second stage engine cutoff? I mean, yes and no. Fluid dynamics is pain. Yep, simulations are never completely accurate. That's right. Did Vulcan roll 360 degrees during the flight? It did this. It had a compounding roll rate that the guidance system dampened out. Because you're getting an offset amount of thrust from 3 SRBs, it wanted to make the vehicle do this. Not roll. It was doing that. It wanted to drift. Back end wanted to come out. Because now your center of thrust is not necessarily pointing at the center of mass. Now those BE4s can compensate, right? BE4s, the two BE4s could do this to roll, or you could put one up like that, one down like that to compensate. But it took a second for the computer to figure out where it needed to place those engines to even out the roll. That, and you're getting a completely different thrust curve than expected from the SRB that blew its nozzle off. So the computer's basically making corrections in real time to the rocket wanting to do that. It wanted to do a barrel roll. And what manifested it, what came up, how did it end up looking on ascent is a compounding roll. But the vehicle wanted to do this. It wanted to flip. Because, yeah, that's what offset thrust does. It makes your vehicle want to turn. Do you think their solution for the SRB failures is to either improve the materials used in the throat, redesign the throat, or add aerodynamic fins, wings to divert air on the dead spots around the SRBs? Phil, you also totally forgot that the BOLE qual test nozzle blew off too. It was terrible. They tested the one for Omega and then they tested the BOLE and both of them blew up. Whoever's designing nozzles up there needs to stop designing nozzles. You shouldn't be in this business. Because you're not making nozzles, you're making explosives. I'm sure there's plenty of industry out there that you will do a good job in. So 3LRD, what would I do? Ditch SRBs. No, they can't do that. I know that they can't do that. Honestly, an interim solution would be fly Vulcan with GEM 60s. But you can't do that because they're not the right length. So, yep, that option's out. Vulcan needs the SRB to be a certain length for the forward attachment point, so that's not happening. So, yeah, can't do that. So, scratch that. It's a tough problem, dude. Tough problem to solve. I would do more tests. Qualify more boosters. Could it be done with some form of thrust adapter? Aqualex is, if that particular mode is the way you want to go, is the juice worth the squeeze? No, absolutely not. No way. You're designing a component for an SRB that you're using as a stopgap. That is terrible engineering. That's a terrible way to do that. I wouldn't do that at all. I'm thinking, what else could you do? I'd qualify another booster. That's for sure. I'd fire 2 boosters next to each other. That's what I would do. Fire 2 of them next to each other. See what happens. Make a twin test stand. It's Northrop Grumman. They have the cash to do that. 2 boosters at the same time, man. Torre Bruno designed Vulcan. Well, no, he oversaw the development of it. See, 3LRD, that's a really good question to ask, because how do you fix this problem? Now that I'm really thinking about it, the way you fix this problem is to fly it more. Fly it more and see what fails and doesn't. But huh. My thought process is this. There's clearly something weird with your thermal analysis going on here. There's very clearly something weird. I think that's a fair thing to say. It's obvious that Northrop Grumman probably knows this. Okay? That's really obvious. I mean, them of all people probably realized their booster popped on the way up. Right? So if they know this, how do you test this? You're having a problem with the booster from radiant heat during the first, I don't know, 30 seconds to a minute of ascent. So that's 30 to 60 seconds during ascent. How do you test this? You don't. That's the real thing here. You don't. It goes back to what Astronaut Guy was saying in chat that prompted this whole discussion. How do you test this? You don't. There's no way to test this. Maybe 2 boosters next to each other. But that still doesn't necessarily give you the right heat flux into the engine. You're not soaking the engine correctly because, operating 2 SRBs next to each other isn't a BE4. Isn't, BE4 next to it. The other thing is that it's 30 to 60 seconds in flight. 30 to 60 seconds into flight with Vulcan is like 10,000 feet that away. There's no test stand that can emulate that. Unless we had a thermal vacuum test stand to fire it. We do not have anything like that. NASA had something like that, and then they sold it to Rocket Lab because they're morons. Not that I hate Rocket Lab. Rocket Lab's cool. So how do you test this? Well, with all that being said, what I would do is fly the SRBs on missions that have a very high performance margin to corroborate your new analysis. Fly them on missions that are relatively low risk, missions that can take the thing blowing off the side. But then again, that's a really terrible way to do things. you'd have to, with SRBs, you have to get to some type of iteration here. Like that's the real thing. Like Northrop Grumman also got the contract for new ICBM. Who is to say those won't fail as well? So I'm going off of the, okay, like I said, I'm kind of putting myself in Northrop Grumman's shoes. They really don't like spending extra money when they don't have to, right? That's the truth. They don't like doing that. And that's fair. That's fine. Totally good. I get that. Your business got to make money. With that all being said, I would figure out a way to build some kind of test stand to test this better, because clearly you don't have a test stand that's adequate enough to be able to corroborate your analysis. They have canted nozzles, yes. Solution is to redesign the stage to not use boosters. See, here's what I don't understand. We have 38 Vulcan flights. 38, I'm pretty sure that's the number. Okay, you have 38 Vulcan flights, and each one of those needs 6 GEM-63XLs working correctly. That's 228 GEM-63XLs over the next, what, 10 years? 228. Build another test stand. Something. Or test these boosters. I would have these boosters. If it was me and I had an order like that, I'd be testing these boosters to the tune of like once a week or something. But see, like, that's the thing. Northrop Grumman doesn't want to do that, because think of the shareholders. They don't want to do stuff like that. The reason why they don't want to do stuff like that is because anything that involves doing anything but the bare minimum work, well, they don't want to. Because that loses money, because aerospace is an endeavor that works like that. Now that's the question, why did the other SRBs work as intended? Dumb luck? Hellfish, if you really want my honest opinion, hold on. Can I look at something real quick? What was Vulcan's third flight? SF-106. Let's look at something here. Let's look at something. What do we got? So this is Vulcan's third flight. Let me see something here. Do we see any ejecta coming out the back? Yep, there's sparks coming out the back. Now keep in mind that does happen. That does happen just with SRBs. Poison, that's the solution that I came to, dude. That's what I'm thinking. But see, yeah, see, this IR strobe's a little bit... Oh, dude, it is flickering. Those boosters are flickering. Look. Man. Look. So this is flame out. One of the plumes from the SRB, actually 3 of the plumes are different. Well, you have 4 SRBs on the SF. This is the SF-106 mission. Look, that one. See that one over here? That one's flame is the tail off was not timed correctly with the other 3. These 2 look to be in time. That one is running a little... Look at the flames, dude. I'm telling you, just... You're getting differential tail off, it looks like. Now, that could just be the flow. It could just be how the, stuff's moving over the vehicle. It could be aero. It could be a bunch of things. But also, look, it's very clear 1, 2, and 3 are burning at a differential rate than that one. Maybe that nozzle did come off. Or not come off. Maybe it ablated more than intended. That also may be the viewing angle. Possible. Yeah, there's a possibility. Hard to say. That thing did sputter a little bit, but yeah. I don't know, man. You guys, all right. This is where my knowledge of solid rocket propellants really kind of runs out. I don't ever... Okay, and you guys, maybe I'll just put this out there. I'll say it. I don't ever remember SRBs shooting out sparks like that. I'll be honest with you. I've watched a lot of rocket launches, and it's probably to the point where I've watched so many of them that, I've never even noticed them shooting sparks out. But maybe I've been, like, Mandela affected or something. I don't ever remember them shooting sparks out like that. I just, even like the shuttle SRBs, I just remember the flames, right? Like, the GEM-40s on Delta IV used to really spark. Okay. The shuttle, I know, never did that crap. Here, let's look at a Delta IV medium launch. This is WGS-9, which was one of the last Delta IV mediums here.
Nine, 8, 7.
Let me see.
6, 5, 4. RS-68A engine ignition. 1. And we have liftoff of the United Launch Alliance Delta IV rocket carrying the WGS-9 mission for the United States Air Force.
I remember
what a
we
great way
watched
to
this.
celebrate the Air Force's 70th birthday.
2019, dude. You gotta be kidding me.
SRM burn profile's also looking good. 20 seconds into flight. SRM chamber pressure is beginning to tail off of max pressure. 30 seconds in.
You're hearing the voice of Patrick Moore providing launch
Mach
vehicle
1
ascent
Delta 4
data.
is now supersonic.
I don't see any sparks coming out of this thing.
Now passing 46 seconds, max Q, maximum dynamic pressure.
See that? That's what it should look like. Now, like I said, SRBs do pop sparks from time to time. That does happen. But I don't remember them popping out as many sparks, even as the SF-106 mission. The SF-106 mission, they were shooting out of there every couple of seconds. That's what it should look like.
Vehicle traveling right down the middle of the range track, looking good. RS-68 engine operating parameters continue to look good.
You see, there's no sparks coming out of that thing.
Now
And those are
passing 1 minute into flight,
GEM-40s.
Approximately 30 seconds remaining in the solid rocket motor burn.
Stop this. You're making me start to like SRBs. There's
SRM
nothing
burn
wrong with solid rocket boosters. I like solid rocket boosters. They're fine. You might not like to hear this, but SRBs have moved more people into space than any other form of propulsion. Think about it. People don't like hearing that, especially people that don't like SRBs. They really don't like hearing that. There's nothing wrong with solid rocket boosters.
Files continue to look good.
There's problems with understanding
Traveling right
what
down
they
the middle of the
do.
range track. Delta 4 is now 14 miles in altitude, 32 miles downrange, traveling at 2,200 miles per hour.
Could be rougher combustion that blasts larger chunks on the inside of the nozzle. Those GEM-63XLs got to be packing a bigger punch, Lava Eagle. They have to be packing a bigger punch to make more thrust. I would only assume that your chamber pressure is higher, right? Maybe you're getting to the limits, the theoretical limits of, a casing that big. But then again, if that was the case, then why does an AJ-260 work? Yeah, Alex, it's very interesting. Now, did BLE fail because they simply used an enlarged GEM63 nozzle setup? I don't know, man. Hard to say. Let's watch that GEM63 XL flight. This was 10 months ago. Let's see. We can't listen to the music, but... Yeah, RB. Yellow flags in my Bathurst race? No, no. We don't need that. I've seen it. So there's the casing behind him, right? It's a composite casing. It's basically a COPV, guys. It's very similar, but it's solid rocket booster instead. Nice. And there's 2B. All right, let's see. Let's go to the test. Liftoff. The external ESRBs are heated from the liquid engine starting prior to SRB start, which could cause issues if they didn't design for it and extrapolate it as mentioned. Look, man, if they put this thing on a test stand and it worked fine, and then they put it back on the rocket and it doesn't work fine, it's something with flying it as a whole, right? Like, that's not... It's a pretty reasonable extrapolation right there. But, see, I'm starting to understand what that exactly means here. How else are you going to test this? There's no other way to test it other than put it on the damn rocket and fly it, which is a terrible way to test things, but also, how else are you going to do it? Putting another one on the stand isn't going to do anything. Also, I'd like to know, just an additional point of note, that they have excess insulator around the aft casing and throat of the nozzle. Huh. See that part that's covered in silver? That's the part that keeps failing. Specifically right where my mouse cursor is, right there. I never noticed it. I didn't notice it last time. All right, let's see. Yeet! It'd be a pretty crazy test stand. Interesting. Now let's look at one more thing. They're not there. I'm not signed in, Green. That's why it's showing that nonsense. They're not there. That protective cover isn't there. feels link loud, but here's one I've always remembered with the night Delta medium launches. Yeah, okay. I just don't... That was AFSPC 6 in 2016. We watched that launch, too. Unless they somehow incorporated it before painting. I don't know, man. It's very interesting to me. I mean, that's what that tinfoil that's on there most likely is something to protect it from heat radiating off the ground. But also at the same time, it's very weird that you'd have that on that and not on your, you know. Looks like they painted over the insulation. That ain't what that looks like to me, dude. But, yeah, I guess. Testing it in the cold could have already made it much less stressful test. I don't think so. Maybe. Maybe, Ethereal, like it's possible, but... Imagine if they put that on there for launches and it fixes the problem. Look, man, you know, that might be something for the test stand, but all I'm saying is that, you know, for their CERT mission here, they seem to have put insulative material or something on the, only on the spot where it's been failing, right? Like, I don't, like, that's all I'm saying is, like, right there is where it fails, like, right in the middle of that insulative material, and then, like, that's all I'm saying, dude. Like, the failure seems to have come from the weld above the nozzle. Disagree, it's at the throat. It's at the throat, dude. Look. Actually, I'll get my buddy Max's picture up. Man, Max posts a lot. Told you without Tori things would fall apart. Yeah. Full speed booster, quick disconnect, retraction on Starbase Live. Nice, dude. Reminds me of how the SLS Boattail had reflective material for it on the green run, but it didn't fly with it. Odyssey, that's a good point, dude. That's a very good point, actually. You know what, dudes? We're getting way too into the weeds with this. Let's just... I'm gonna explain the... I'm gonna show you guys the rest of the space news. But yeah, something's wrong with those things. You know, I highly doubt it was a manufacturing thing at this point. But really, you know, I'll save... I have two more things, but I'll save them for the next space news. But anyway. So let's take a look here. This is a shot of Blue Moon Mark 1 in the thermal vacuum chamber at Johnson Space Center. Look at that. There's Blue Moon's first lunar lander. That's launching this year. Blue's going to put their own lunar lander on the surface. Hopefully. Remember that pic that Tori posted a while back of all the GE M63XLs in storage? Northrop has a lot of boosters to rework. Chopsticks are moving too. But yeah, check it out. There you go. Blue Moon Mark 1 should be launching sometime in the next couple of months. Good stuff. All right, let's just pull up Starbase Live here real quick. They are moving the chopsticks down on that pad. I was just typing this, adding to the heat talk. Radiative heat is transferred to different surfaces depending on the view factor from emitter to the receiving surface. In a single SRB test, the plume basically does not see the throat. In the real launch, the BE4s do see the nozzle. Lava, like I said, pretty sure that's what's going on. Like, maybe I'm being a dick and about like to people at Northrop Grumman, and I swear I'm not trying to be that guy. I'm trying to figure out like how do you make this mistake. My guess is that they, like I said, they probably extrapolated the GEM63, not XL. Probably took the GEM63, tested that on Atlas, said it was good enough, lengthened it a little bit, and probably extrapolated analysis based off of length and from their testing data, right? But that doesn't include testing it as a whole on the vehicle. That's the only really unknown there, right? And it's hilarious to me that they'd write it off as they say, oh, it's a manufacturing defect. It's not. It's not a manufacturing defect. It never was a manufacturing defect. It's not. Your analysis wasn't good enough because it's likely extrapolated because these companies they like to do stuff like that. That's how companies with hard horizontal integration work. Exactly, Sirius. It wouldn't happen twice if it was a manufacturing defect. No, after you fixed it, after you qualified a new booster. First of all, qualifying a new... We should have seen the signs earlier, dude. Qualifying a new booster for a manufacturing defect? That is not the right course of action for a manufacturing defect. You're not that guy. You're this guy. That's right. When are they bringing in the giant bento box so they can make full use of those towers chopsticks? Oh, I don't know. A methane LOX plume, oxygen-rich methalox plume would radiate way more heat than an RP1 plume. That's what I was saying, guys. Yeah. Man, when you really kind of sit here and think about this, dude, what a freaking cluster. How did you frick this up? They must, like I said, they must have been using extrapolated flight data from Atlas. Oh, we just lengthen it a little bit. It'll be fine. No, it won't. You change that, like the engines are different. That's a completely different thermal regime for the SRBs on ascent. More so if they're clustered together. Bro, they screwed up. Like I don't mean to dick on Northrop Grumman. Like that's like I don't mean to be a jerk. Like, but they screwed up. You screwed up bad, actually. Like real bad. And once again, I ain't saying I can do any better either. But I'm not a multi-billion-dollar corporation, okay? That gets tons of money from the government, all right? In contracts, not subsidies. Look, all I'm saying is that someone gave me a couple $2 billion to design an SRB, I would make sure my SRB doesn't do that. Okay? Like, I'm just putting it out there. Another question, do we know if they scrapped the already built boosters or if they simply inspected them? I don't know. Anyway, that was the last bit of space news, dude. Yeah, we're getting up to 8 o'clock. That was a good one. Good space news. But that is going to do it for space news. Okay, keep in mind we're kind of dry on rocket launches this week. We have 3 Falcons and an Alpha. There was a little bit more, but yeah, this took too much time. I'm trying to keep space news to about 2.5 hours, give or take. After that, it's just doing this. So, yeah. Now back to launching Factorio rockets. I hope Alpha makes it this time. Yeah, me too. Now it's time to show Northrop how it's done in Factorio. You know, I was going to play Winter Car, but I think doing like a dedicated Factorio day with Space News and then tomorrow doing a dedicated Winter Car day with Space News. I think that's the winning formula, just for the strict reason why that like I don't feel like digging out the racing rig right now. So, just saying, a Factorio rocket has never failed. That's right, because it's a good design. What did you do to your hand? I have a cyst on my wrist that is really, really making my carpal tunnel angry. I hate it. I want to just that damn thing out. Look, see that? That's not supposed to be there. Yeah, it sucks. I don't know how it got there or why it got there. My other wrist is fine. My left hand's good to go. Can they not just remove it? I haven't really gotten to that point with the doctors yet, Cirrus, so. We're at the just see if it goes away phase. And we're not winning that battle. Are you left-handed? No. Anyway. It's not the mouse that did this, guys. You know what did this? All the clamps that we're using in the garage. Because I've been using the mouse for years. This has never happened. All those clamps in the garage to hold panels in place that we use for the coronet. That's what did this. I'm pretty damn sure. All right. Anyway, that's going to do it for Space News. I think we will play Factorio, and then we'll just do Winter Car and Space News tomorrow. Good stuff. All right. I'll see you guys in a little bit. I'm going to jog the VODs, and we'll get back to Factorio. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the Space and Rocket review. We'll see you tomorrow for more. Okay, we are clear from YouTube. Sweet. Let me just open the door. Getting hot today. We actually had a day above freezing outside, which is nice. I had one in the same spot. I play guitar a lot. Had surgery to remove it. It's fine now, but yeah, it sucks. Yeah. I have been playing the axe a lot, Oridon, so. Crap. But yeah, I think it's just the clamps and stuff, man. All right, let me switch us up here. We are on part 9.
Discovery, go at throttle up.
Launchpad is built. Expanding to build rockets. Factorio part 9.